Nighttime on Still Waters. This is NB 506812, narrowcasting into the night from somewhere on Britain's waterways. March, Monday. Sometimes the canal is silent, biding time, keeping counsel. Don't ask, let things be. At other times it reaches out with whispers that sing soft and low, holding memories of old friends. It's a wild night tonight, and a noisy one too. The wind is howling among the alders and ash as the Erica gently rocks and creaks at her mooring lines. The calendar hung on the study's bulkhead slowly swings from side to side, and the barometer is dropped and the isobars tighten, and the rooks ride the storm-tossed treetops in their ragged piratical nests. This is the narrowboat Erica, narrowcasting into the darkness of a stormy April night, to you, wherever you are. It's so lovely to see you. I was hoping you'd be able to make it tonight. How are you? But come inside out of the wind. It's forecast to gust up to 55 miles an hour, with lashing rain to boot. So don't stand around outside, even though it is rather lovely. We're warm and cosy. The kettle is whistling, the biscuit barrel is full, and there's a seat that's especially waiting for you. Come inside and welcome aboard. April come she will, when the streams are ripe and swelled with rain. So wrote Paul Simon. The incessant rains have abated, at least for a while, but the streams are ripe, and the canal water here lies high. There's a pool of bluebells unfurling just down from us, still young in their impossible blue, and the mat of leaf litter is submerging under a vibrant thick carpet of emeralds and jades. It's Easter and bright, and the towpath sings its siren song to all those who will come. And for the last couple of days, long straggling processions of walking groups have progressed past us, and Maggie and I weave our way through the throng, dodging bikers and pushchairs. Groups gather at gateways to pause and watch the ewes with their young lambs. Magpies cackle and pigeons bluster among the branches above, while buzzards and kites wheel to the rook sentries perched high and precarious, shouted warnings and outraged cries. It's been a benevolent winter for most. Scarlet berries of haw from last autumn's profusion still hang in little clusters, untouched. And many rosehips also remain, although they are looking much worse for wear, dimpled with hollows, dull red turning to brown. And the hedgerows still billow white with blackthorn, but the blossoming is almost over, and it's gradually giving way to the lime-green flush of leaves. Elsewhere, a haze of deeper, richer greens casts a bloom among the bare hedgerow branches. Privet, hawthorn, tight whirls of budding elder, and glossy ivy leaves catch the sun like the polished bonnets of Bentleys in British racing green. The brown strip of beaten earth that lies at the edge of the path, canal side, has suddenly become once more thick and verdant with new growth. Nettle, dock, alum, cow parsley, and fountain plumes of hemlock leaves of water dropwort spout in gushing green geysers. And the canal itself has also become busier. There's been a lot of boats on the move. It's good to see, particularly after last year. The bumble of an engine at tick over. A smile, a wave or two, sometimes a shouted greeting. And holiday hires with the obligatory captain's hat. I love the enthusiasm and joy. A day boat eases under one of the nearby narrow bridge hulls. Maggie stands and watches with a critical eye. And as they come out the other side without so much as a scrape, the whole boat erupts with cheers. Maggie takes it that the cheers are as much for her as they are for the skilled helmsmanship. People from all walks of life converge on this narrow strip of water, sharing something special, making memories. There's got to be something precious about that. The canal doesn't choose who comes to its still waters, but it does choose those who stay. It's been lovely to hear from you, so thank you for taking the time and the trouble to contact me. And a special hello and greetings to Murmuration72 over on Instagram. Greetings, and I really hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you. And over on Blue Sky, greetings to Jeff Van Boeven. Yes, Jeff, I think in view of the hot weather you're having over there, skipping the stove-side seat is a very sensible thing, and I wouldn't blame you at all. And hello also to Captain Arlo. It must feel a bit weird, doesn't it, having those colossal mountains of snow when the temperatures are in the low 20s? Or is that fairly normal for you? Greetings also to Jason and Karen Pilley. Thank you so much for your comments, as always, Jason, and we're thinking of you both with your imminent move onto your boat, the narrowboat Dera Rosa. It's such a lovely time of year to make this move, and as I said, thoughts are going to be with you. Greetings also to Tracy Thomas, and I'm glad the episodes are working their magic for you, Tracy. And thank you also for your comments about the stories. I will be working on some new ones sometime and hopefully have one or so later on in the year. And greetings to Charlie Alice Raya. Thank you so much for your email and all of your kind words, and I hope your deep dive into work and writing are going really well. And while I'm here, can I just mention what's becoming a wonderful series of videoed interviews by the writer and boater Jen Radcliffe of the Mess in a Boat Substack. Jen started a water book club, which she describes as a space for aquaphiles during a time of drought and doubt in nature, where we discuss monthly books centered around the watery world, as well as having interviews with writers, researchers, artists, and all those who look to bring the water into our imagination and care. And the two interviews, recorded from a live stream that she does, that she's produced so far, are really interested, and I'm sure they're going to strike a chord with anyone here interested in canals, boat life, and water in general. Her most recent one was with Hannah Pierce, the author of All Boats Are Sinking. It's a wonderful title, which is her account of the very eventful time living on the canals. It's a wry and heartfelt book that presents an unglamorous but nevertheless very affectionate look at life on a boat. And I'm really sure that you're going to find it interesting as I did. And in fact, her earlier interview was just as fascinating and informative, and was with the scientist and aquaphile Dr. Amy Jane Beer about her inspiring book, Flow, Rivers, Waters and Wildness. And I've added a link to Jen's Water Book Club in the program notes below. As I said, please check them out because I'm sure that you're going to find them really interesting and enjoyable. Well, all that reminds me to do is to say a really, really big thank you to all of our Lockwheelers for supporting this podcast. We really do appreciate you, so thank you. And they are Anna McKellar, Susan Baker, Mind Shambles, Clare Hollingsworth, Kevin B., Fleur and David Mcloughlin, Lois Raphael, Tania Yorgey, Andrea Hansen, Chris Hinds, Chris and Alan on the narrowboat The Land of Green Ginger, Captain Arlo, Rebecca Russell, Allison on the narrowboat Mukka, Derek and Pauline on Silver Fox, Anna V, Orange Cookie, Mary Keane, Tony Rutherford, Arabella Holtzapfel, Rory with MJ and Kayla, the narrowboat Precious Chat, Linda Reynolds Perkins, Richard Noble, Carol Ferguson, Tracy Thomas, Mark and Tricia Stowe, and Madeline Smith. Thank you. The threads of winter's skirts are unravelling, although there's still enough remaining to cast its edge upon the air and scatter a few ice crystals on the morning fields from time to time. This is the in-between, the borderland between the Anglo-Saxon bastions of Winter and Sumor, when Britain had only 2 seasons, and dark winter held sway to the yearly incursion of sun and warmth. As humans, we seem to be good at identifying warfare and battle everywhere, even when it really isn't justified. Perhaps it's soothing or comforting to feel that it's not just us, that we are not alone in our propensity for violence and conflict. We can't be so bad. Maybe it's just natural. Look, even above us, the clouds race in advancing fronts across the great meteorological battlefield of the sky. And the terminology is deliberate, coined by meteorologists looking at the lines of the blood-soaked trenches along the battlefields of the First World War to describe those dancing movement of air masses above us. You have to give it to us. It's not always easy seeing battle and carnage in the weather or in the passing seasons, but somehow we manage it. And in this battle, mortally wounded winter bleeds blossom and birdsong. Winter's hinterland. And there's something messy and potentially unsettling about these hinterlands, these borders, margins. After a couple of days of sunshine and a gentle permeating warmth, we zip up our winter coats to the fresh northwesterly that flings gravel like hail in our faces and growl, "I thought spring was supposed to have come." And we hold it as a personal affront, as if some breach of contract has occurred. And I too catch myself. It's only the 2nd of April, I have to tell myself. And spring, like the filling tide, doesn't come all at once, but in tiny waves, wave upon wave, gradually possessing the land. First the celandine and aconite, then the blackthorn, then the snowdrop and crocus, each little lapping wave lifting spring's tide higher and higher. It takes time for the sleeping soil to awaken, that drowsy, muddled and disordered time. The disorder and unpredictable unruliness of the liminal, the borderland, where things aren't cut and dried. It keeps us on our toes. And I'm not sure why this can so often feel so strange to us, so surprising. Why do we seek to find solace in dualities of either or, over one thing or the other, no in between? The Cartesian dualism that has seeped and bled into all parts of our culture, its politics too. Off, on, good, bad, right, wrong, dark, light. I guess it neatly fits our tick-box bureaucracy, and knowledge becomes information. And information can be processed using noughts and ones. It allows me to know what a thing is, and importantly, to also know what a thing is not. And woe betide if it falls somewhere in between the two. It'll implode the system and chaos will descend. Make sure you colour between the lines. But then, look around us, and this binary way of seeing things becomes so foreign, so alien. Step outside the human bubble for even a few steps, and the arbitrary dividing lines that delineate knowable facts falls apart with each step. And we stab pencils into our calendars to mark the date when one season stops and another starts. But all along we know in our heart of hearts it doesn't really mean a thing. These edges are frayed, blended, softened by shadows and inconsistencies and uncertainties. Spring seeps into winter until one day we realize that it is here, and we've discarded our heavy jumpers and scarves. High tide or low tide. The reality is that for most of its time, the sea is somewhere in between the two. And at the beginning of this week, it was the borrowing days. It's a name given to the final 3 days of March. It's new to me, or if I have heard it before, I've forgotten it. Borrowed days seems to fit so well this time of year that I'm surprised that it's escaped my notice for so long. The term relates to old songs and stories, generally associated with Ireland and Scotland, that tell how the volatile and impulsive wintry month of March begged or borrowed, or even stole from the good-natured, bountiful month of April 3 of her days, and so extend her own rule for 3 further days. There are elements of the Cailleach legend in it. This isn't surprising, as this too appears to have its roots, if not its origins, in Irish and Scottish mythology. And as we heard a couple of episodes back in the belly of winter, there is this tradition associated with the Cailleach, this hag-like symbol of winter with Imbolc. A warm, dry Imbolc means that spring is a false one and winter will return, because furious at the encroaching occupation of spring, the Cailleach storms out, cutting each blade of green new growth that is thrusting out of the soil and leaf mould, in order for her reign over the land to continue for a few weeks more. Winter seeks to extend her reign against the onslaught of spring, and that's the heart of the borrowing days of March. And about them, Sir Walter Scott wrote, "The last 3 days of March are called the borrowing days, for as they are remarked to be unusually stormy, it is feigned that March has borrowed them from April to extend his sphere of his rougher sway. And one Scotch verse reads, March borrowed from April 3 days, and they were ill. The first was frost, the second was snow, the third was cold as even could blow. This idea leans into the old weather lore of equinoctial gales, windstorms that often are encountered at the spring and autumn equinoxes. Although weather records don't really support this belief, nevertheless, there always does seem to be a lot of windstorms around this time of year. And a variation of this is found within Irish folklore, where the borrowing days relate not to the end of March, but to April itself. And Bridget Haggerty on the Irish Cultures and Customs website writes the following. The old brindle cow boasted that even the rigours of March could not kill her, whereupon March borrowed 3 days from April, and using these with redoubled fury, killed and skinned the poor cow. Henceforth, the first 3 days of April traditionally bring very bad weather and are known as the borrowed or borrowing days, the skinning days, or other names like that. I've also come across versions of this story, but instead of a cow, it's an old and hubristic pig who boasted that Winder was unable to kill him off. However, the consequence was the same and just as brutal. And Bridget Haggerty goes on to refer to another old version, in which this time the borrowing days fall into the middle of April. And she quotes, This 12th day of April is the first of 3 days of the old brindle cow, namely 3 days in which the weather of March took from the beginning of old April. And another old ballad renders these 3 days in this way. The first of them was wind and wet. The second of them was snow and sleet. The third of them was such a freeze, it froze the birds' claws to the trees. And apparently in Northern Ireland, the story was even more elaborate, with 9 borrowed days instead of the 3. And the old legend states that the blackbird, the stone chatter, and the old grey cow bid defiance to March after his days were done, and that to punish their insolence, he begged of April 9 of his days, 3 of each of them, for which he repaid 9 of his own. 3 days for fleecing the blackbird, 3 days of punishment for the stone chatter, and 3 days for the grey cow. At the heart of all these variants are truths and lessons, warnings against pride, hubris, and underestimating the power of the elements. It also points to harder times when the coming of winter was something to be really feared. And I remember in one really early episode of this podcast talking about that fear that could be felt in the writings of the diaries of the clerics like Francis Kilvert, when noting the oncoming winter and the plight of those who were vulnerable in their care. And on a more general note, it's a way of articulating that exact unruly messiness of these marginal borderland times that I was describing at the beginning. The way seasons merge together, the uncertainties that brings. And there's also an element that the placing of these days later into April also makes some kind of sense, as they fall into the traditional timing of the notorious blackthorn winter, that cold snap that takes us so often by surprise. And the time around April the 12th has also long been associated with another, now rather derided, weather phenomenon, the second of Buchan's 6 cold spells, this one falling between April the 11th and 14th. And the Shetland Museum and Archive site records yet one more variant on all of this. Returning back to the last 3 days of March, they write, "The borrowing days are days borrowed from the future, and these days are perhaps the most important days of weather watching in our calendar. The weather of each day predicts what the weather will be like in upcoming months. The 29th of March is said to have been borrowed from May, the 30th borrowed from June, and the 31st from July." And here we come across another very familiar trope and motif. Like Imbolc, St. Swithin's Day, and countless other lesser days associated with weather lore and prognostication dotted throughout our calendar, an attempt is made to feel a little less at the whim of weather. We might not be able to control it, but we can at least predict it, or hope to. Truculent March comes out of this all a little bit better anyway. We'll see how it goes. If my memory is correct, the 29th of March this year was sunshine and showers. The 30th was dry, overcast and windy with a northerly bite to it. And the 31st was dry, very warm and summery. If this is the case, we're in for a typical May, a cool, windy June, and a hot July. So we'll see. And as we navigate together the different borrowing days, this is the narrowboat Erica, signing off for the night and wishing you a very restful and peaceful night. Good night. Temperature outside 11.7 degrees, inside 23 degrees, humidity 75%, dew point 7 degrees, wind direction south-southwest, wind strength 24 miles per hour, barometric pressure 1002 falling, cloud cover 90%, cloud ceiling 1,500 feet, precipitation 0.21 millimeters, moon phase 92.5% waning gibbous, day length 13 hours 12 minutes, sunset 1947, sky casting 6:32.